Welcome to the Superhero of Love podcast. I am Bridget Fonger. I wrote a book called Superhero of Love, Heal Your Broken Heart, and Then Go Save the World. That book is going to be out in January 2019, but I didn't want to wait until that time to start talking to superheroes of love. And guess what? Here's the news. You are a superhero of love. And through talking to other superheroes like yourself, tapping into that little superhero inside of you, I'm hoping that you and I and all of us start feeling more and more like superheroes of love, meaning that we love and are loved more than ever before. So welcome. Let's get this party started. Superheroes. We are here with Dr. Marni Feuerman. Dr. Marni Feuerman is the author of Ghosted and Breadcrumbed, Stop Falling for Unavailable Men and Get Smart About Healthy Relationships. She is a therapist whose expertise is in the area of relationships. And I am so excited for her to be here because I read her book a few weeks ago. And if anybody has been ghosted or breadcrumbed, which, by the way, I did not even know what breadcrumbed was. So we'll talk about that first, just in case anybody else out there didn't know what breadcrumbed was.
Absolutely.
I just want to say to anybody that's been recently ghosted and they need something. And in fact, oh my God, I have so many friends that have been ghosted. I have not had that experience miraculously with men, but if somebody has just been ghosted and you've been traumatized by it, this is a really easy read and it's a really fast read and it's a really fun read. And it's also not just for people that have been ghosted or breadcrumbed. Like that subtitle says, if you've been falling for unavailable men, this would probably be one step toward you getting smart about not doing that. So the first thing that I want to dive into is I want to hear about a little bit more about your story. Now, I know that a lot of the stories, and I love books that have stories of your patients in them, and so those are peppered throughout, which is really fun. But I would love to hear what brought you to this moment that you are a relationship expert. Like, did you struggle before you found the love of your life, etc.?
Yeah, some of my own stories are woven in there, sprinkled in there a little bit too, and certainly client stories. So yeah, I spent most of my 20s making a lot of mistakes. I did meet my husband and get married and finally settle down, but it took a lot of trials and tribulations. And so I was about, I want to say 31 before I met him and got married. So I had, yes, a lot of bad experiences, and I had to do my own work and have my own therapy and figure things out. And there were a lot of things from my own family history, things that were blocking me and causing me to repeat a lot of patterns, or, definitely some men who were emotionally unavailable, but also men that just weren't healthy themselves. So I think naturally it probably makes sense that I'm also like in the helping profession, so there's something I'd say to that. I'm definitely was, drawn to the field, and I love psychology and behavioral health. And I didn't specialize necessarily at first, but then as time went on and I got more experience in the field, I was drawn more to work with couples and understanding family dynamics. And now I specialize in couples and marriage therapy. And so I think also a piece of that is, being a child of divorce and how that's influenced me. So yes, I definitely have some of my own stories. And then one of the other reasons I wrote this book was I have a lot of online content. I write a lot of articles that, out there on various media websites. And some of the ones that got the most views and shares were ones about similar types of themes. So women struggling with married men and not knowing what to do, wanting to know whether or not they should walk away. They're an affair partner and they're waiting for this person to leave their wife, and they're stuck. Other ones related to feeling emotionally abused in a relationship and not really, which is it's so subtle a lot of times, this type of abuse. And so I think it really resonated with people seeing some of the things where people go, oh yeah, oh my gosh, that's me. That's happening to me. And then clicking and putting it together that they're in a really unhealthy situation. So that was good data for me that told me that there's got to be a lot of women struggling in these situations. And so it was sort of a natural fit between my own experiences and what I sensed people wanted. There was a need for it out there. And so just putting that together. And so hence we have the full-blown book here.
So let's talk about this whole, in my 20s, 30s, and 40s dating, I was never ghosted. Like people didn't just up and disappear. This seems to be like this new phenomenon. And then also second part of the question is, tell us about what breadcrumbing is.
Sure. Yeah, ghosting was one of the first terms that I had heard for when someone who shows you romantic interest, you may have had a date, you may have even had a couple months of a relationship, and then poof, they disappear, but no contact, you don't know what's happened. It leaves a lot of ambiguity and a lot of doubt. It brings up a lot of self-doubt and what if and what was it me, what happened? And that uncertainty drives people crazy. And so other terms then came from that I think are just to describe these dating trends, a lot of like quirky, funny, kind of funny terms. And a lot of it, I think, came from the millennial generation and online dating and all of that, which has just evolved so much. And so we have some other words, and I think another one that I thought was pretty popular was the breadcrumbing, like when somebody strings you along, they throw you breadcrumbs just to kind of keep you engaged, but they don't have any real intention for commitment, but they want to give you just enough to keep you hanging on. And then there's a few others, and I think...
Did you have any experience with either ghosting or breadcrumbing?
Sure, definitely both. I've definitely had the ghosting experience, and when I read about what it's like and why it's so distressing, it made so much sense. Because we do not like to not know. We don't want to have loose ends. We want a little bit of feedback. But also it feels like it lacks empathy for like another human being.
Yes, I'm going to read a quote from your book because I love the way you put it. It's really, really super simple, but it's so great. It says,
oh, I love this. Awesome.
there is never a perfect time to break up with someone you love, but certain circumstances make it more amicable. I do not recommend ghosting someone, as tempting as that might be. You can and should bring empathy and integrity to the process and apply the golden rule.
I would say that the only exception I really recommend to people is if they feel like they're in danger, if they feel like it's unsafe. Certainly you get a free pass to ghost and do whatever you need to do for your safety. Otherwise, these are hard conversations to have, but they're also a sign of being an adult, being mature, learning to have effective communication, even over something that's difficult. You're going to need that your whole life. I mean, certainly if you do want to have a long-term relationship with somebody, you're going to want to know how to approach, tricky topics. And you don't have to give a whole lot of details. You can say, I have some suggestions in the book too. Just saying, I don't think I see a future. I don't feel the chemistry. I feel like, more that I can relate to you as a friend. I just don't see the romance in our future. You don't have to, you don't have to insult the person or give them negative feedback. You don't have to do that. And so I think generally people appreciate it. And I know that there's been times where, the other thing that I think makes it hard is I remember feeling really bad when I had to break up with someone if I was in that circumstance, and I would really, try to just say something and just get it over with. And sometimes you do get a very negative response. You get someone who is really unhappy with you and can't believe it, and they want to argue. And, I think that's rare, but it does happen, and it just makes it more uncomfortable. But I still think, look, you still have to do it. And I think, like the book said, bringing integrity to the process is going to be key.
I love that. And I love how you talk about throughout the book, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So that's an uncomfortable conversation to have when you're breaking up with somebody. But like you said, there's so many uncomfortable conversations in the course of a relationship. Okay. So a good portion of the book is on attachment styles. So let's talk about that. And I love the phrase attachment distress. Like just reading that phrase, attachment distress, I felt like I had a cellular memory of attachment distress.
Yes. Well, attachment distress an attachment theory. This is a very this is a way of explaining human behavior. So attachment is not pathology. So I want to make that clear. We all have attachment styles that we develop. That first start in we say from cradle to grave. So as soon as when you're born, you're not born with the ability to take care of yourself. And so that very first relationship of somebody taking care of us and being responsive to our needs and helping us thrive, that forms like a blueprint for us. And so the quality of the bond that we have with that caregiver can vary, right? We know that some parents are horribly neglectful, sometimes even abusive, and we know some parents are wonderfully responsive and very engaged and very tuned in to the needs of the child. And so that can really vary on a continuum. And so attachment distress occurs when, and again, it's very natural when you see like a mother with a child and the mom leaves the room and the child starts to cry, the mom comes back, can soothe the baby. So when the baby starts crying because mommy leaves, that's what we call attachment distress. They're a little dysregulated, emotionally, and this way their attachment figure, the person they have this bond, and connection with, returns, and right away they calm and they return to that baseline again. And then as the child gets older and older, the child feels more and more can explore the world, more readily, and feel safe to do so because they now know, well, mom might be home, is home there waiting for me. So I can go out and do these things and feel safe because I have a safe space, secure haven to come back to. And you feel confident in the way that you interact with the world, how you see other people, how you see yourself. And again, that really varies. But what they didn't know, this research all started between parents and children. And you've probably heard about attachment parenting, and it's the same concept that we want parents to be responsive to their children. Way back in maybe the 50s, maybe the 40s, they used to say, oh, if the baby cries, don't respond right away because you're going to teach the baby to need you more and more and not be independent. We know, okay, that's totally wrong. Don't do that. And so then we started with attachment parenting. And so we learned later that the same sort of attachment distress occurs in adult romantic relationships. So you have this blueprint for how responsive you think people are. And you might have learned, okay, I have to be really independent and what we call downregulate your feelings because nobody really comes. If your parents were neglectful and didn't come, you think, well, I don't need them anymore. I learned how to just do everything on my own. If your parents were inconsistent, you might end up with what's called an anxious or preoccupied style. So you never know when mom's going to come running when you're when you need something. Sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't. So you learn people are inconsistent. And sometimes in order to get my needs met, I can't just cry, low. I have to cry really, really loud. Like I have to really wave mom down, And so we can tend to do that in our relationships later too, because we think people don't always come when you call. So that's the overarching theme about attachment. And we develop styles, related to that later on. You're either secure, and that's wonderful and great because that means that you've had a lot of consistency, or one of three insecure styles can play out. You're either avoidant, you're anxious, or you're kind of a combination of the two that we call fearful avoidant or disorganized. And that often comes if you had a very abusive childhood, abusive situation, unfortunately.
Yeah, I resonated. They were all fascinating to me, but I think I resonated with one of them more. And I remember a couple seminal moments in relationships in my 20s where I literally the fear that was thrilling through every cell in my body with that detachment, right? And the distress level was so high, and it really was like the stress of an infant with their mom. Like I felt like it was a recurring thing from something that had happened in my infancy. And I have this recurring, I asked my dad before he passed away, is this memory correct? I remember being in a sink as an infant and felt like I was on fire. And he said, what? How do you remember that? And he said that they were on a road trip and I had a really, really high fever. And my mother was so freaked out by it that he had to take her in the other room and subdue her. And he came back to get me. But I said, but in those moments, I said, how long were you gone? And he said, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes. I said, well, it felt like forever.
Wow, yes.
As an adult, feeling like it almost felt like that, like out of tune with what is going on here. It's just, he left during an argument. It's not the end of the world.
But it does reactivate that. Yes, that attachment distress. Exactly. We're born the desire to connect is natural. So we're born with that. We're all wired that way. It's these things that happen to us along the way that tell us, your needs are going to be met or they're not going to be met or whatever it is. And that's why we have even the most extreme version, when infants are in these, let's say, orphanages where there's like one caretaker per 20 kids or something. And then they have what's called reactive attachment disorder. They don't attach. They don't attach very readily or easily. So in order to thrive, you need that early. And you need that same consistency and reliability from a romantic partner later in life. And when you don't have it, then that your whole attachment system gets all stirred up. So,
one of the great things in the book is that you give tips on, you find your attachment style and you give tips on how to deal with other attachment styles and how you can make it work. It's like your attachment style doesn't have to be bad and wrong. It's just what's so. And and I love the way that you dealt with that so lovingly. It's like, don't worry, you too can have a committed relationship. You are not banished to the orphanage. No.
Yes, that's really the good news. Not that it doesn't take a lot of work, but I think once you start to realize and recognize it, and I remember for me, even when I did extensive training in this to learn about it and to learn how to apply it in my work with couples and also individuals who are trying to figure all this out. Even myself, I developed even more insight about things and my behavior and why I did what I did or do what I do, or like you just said, you have a certain reaction and it doesn't make sense until it makes sense when you put it in the attachment framework. And then you're like, oh, that's why when he did this, it triggered me so much. Mm-hmm. It triggers you because this goes back into your implicit memory. So this is all cemented back there. And so if we can have insight about it, and then of course the second piece of this is setting a goal to change it. So you're making these behavioral changes as well. So you're not just going, okay, I know what this is, I understand it, but then you're doing something about it. And maybe you're even taking risks because you're doing something out of your comfort zone. So normally if, let's say, you crank it up and scream and yell at a partner who walks away during an argument, you might say to yourself, well, when I scream and yell, that pushes him more and more away. It makes him want to shut down. It makes him think I look like a lunatic. It does all the wrong things. So what I'm going to do is, maybe try to calm and center myself more and approach him in a way that helps him stay present during this argument. Because the shutting down person, that's their own strategy. That's their own coping strategy too. Because when they hear yelling and screaming, they maybe feel overwhelmed. They maybe don't know what to do. Maybe they think, oh, I can't, there's nothing I can do right now. She's out of control. Especially if they're not used to that kind of emotionality, if they didn't grow up, if it was like very flatlined in their house, So it's about understanding emotion, understanding your reactions, and then understanding how to apply it better in relationships. And certainly your search for love, it could be really, really helpful as well.
The other concept here that I love is the second phase of love, attunement. I'm going to read another piece here. The success of the second phase of love, meaning the phase after the limerence phase, is highly contingent upon you and your partner having both trust and attunement, two concepts that she discusses further. But I love this. The core of attunement contains the word tune for a good reason. With positive attunement, you find it relatively easy to tune into yourself and your partner's world so that you both may respond appropriately to each other's cues, emotional state, and emotional needs. When misattunement occurs, there is also a clear pathway to reattune and repair the relationship. When this does not readily happen, attachment distress is the result. So this is the antithesis of the attachment distress and a way to manage the moments that you were just discussing.
Yes, absolutely. We want to pick up on these cues. We want to be able to, look at our partners or, someone that even if we're dating, we are constantly looking to see if we, say something, how do they look? Do they look down? Do they look upset? Do they roll their eyes? What do they do? And so when we feel like there's this mismatch or they don't get us, that maybe we're trying to emote something or share something meaningful and they're not picking up on it, you feel like you're not on the same level with them. And then there's disconnection. There's a disconnect. And it can definitely happen in any relationship, right? Especially long-term relationships. But the people who repair, who are able to kind of recalibrate and say, oh, I see you're upset at me. What happened? Did I do something? I'm sorry. Doing whatever you can to repair, and you come back into alignment over that. And again, it's the same thing with a parent and a baby. Okay. Like sometimes we're trying to do it all the time and we might miss a tune. We miss something. Oh, our child's upset. What happened? I don't get it. And you kind of want to reassess and you go, oh, you wanted your ball over there or whatever it is. So we do that, but the repair is, figuring it out and kind of coming back together to reconnect. And so we are going to do that as a parent and we're going to do it in our relationships.
Yeah, I like talking about it. About parenting. I'm not a parent myself, but you can add so much more compassion when you're talking about children, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think it can also, I think a good point about that as well is that sometimes people, when they're in the attachment distress and they act certain ways that can be perceived as not so good, not so healthy. They're things that we judge somebody on. A lot of times that's just been their coping strategy, and it could have worked really well for them a long time ago. Like if you're a baby who had to scream really, really loud for a long time to finally get mom's attention, and then in your marriage or your relationship, you're screaming really, really loud to get your husband's attention, like that's not random.
Right. And it still can come in handy.
Yes. And so we want to learn better, more adaptive ways, certainly to do that so that our relationships are healthier. Part of what I think I wanted like to share in the book, or I hope that I impart in the book, is that we want to be very careful about, who we're dating, especially if we're making this choice and we're wanting a long-term relationship or we're wanting commitment on some level or however that looks to you. But you're wanting a partner. You're wanting someone who does attune to you and does know how to repair, and they recognize and feel they're hurt if you're hurt. And they want to help. They want to fix it. And if you're in distress, they don't just continue to pull away from you, that they look to do something about it. And if they don't know how, there's a willingness to work on it. Nobody's going to be perfect, but I think if you share and you say, I feel like you're really inconsistent, and I reach out to you and, you don't get back to me for 4 or 5 hours. I know you're busy, but you don't just shoot me a text to say, really busy right now, thinking of you, call you tonight. Like something that lets me know that you're accessible and I could reach you if I need you. And if they act like they don't care or they just blow it off, again, that's information for you. Like, is this someone that you want to be with if they don't care that you're distressed over, over this particular thing, or they don't want to work on it?
I was just listening to an NPR interview with the daughter of Fay Ray and Fay Ray's husband, her father, who was, I can't remember his first name, Raskin. And so the daughter wrote a memoir about their love affair, and she had a lot of love letters that her father wrote. And Fay Ray was opening in a play that was not expected to do well. Like, they were worried about this play. And the name of the play escapes me, but it's not important. But she was even more nervous opening than ever before, and he couldn't be with her. So he sent her the most beautiful letter, imagining himself there, like imagining him holding her hand, imagining them talking about the nerves, imagining them talking about everything about the evening and transforming it together, like transforming the nerves into excitement with her. So he sent her this. It was such a beautiful letter that I even felt calm. It was like,
yes.
And I was like, what an emblem. I heard that just on my way home to do this interview with you. I heard that interview and I was like, wow, that's attunement.
That's really showing up for somebody, even if they can't physically be there. They did not even the next best thing, something almost even better, because that's like straight, that's so heartfelt.
Yeah. It's nurturing. And apparently he wrote her those kinds of letters throughout their relationship, just really empathetic and taking care of her feelings. And I was like, well, that's something that he naturally had. And I was so curious. Like, I'm curious to read the book. I'm curious to read about his background and what his parents were like. I mean, that's something that's such a beautiful gift that he had and that he gave to her. For men, it's harder to be emotionally attuned, I think, just naturally. Or maybe that's a bad generalization, but that tuning in, back to the word tuning, right? So let's talk about that. Like, if your partner isn't able, to give you what you feel that you emotionally need in these moments like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think science tells us that it is skewed a bit, though, with men, unfortunately. And I think we're realizing that, though, and I think we're really looking to do something about it. And I would say that maybe the next generation, or the generation of men coming up now, we might do it a little differently, because I think we were still socializing them to maybe be more stoic and not express their feelings so much. We have a term now, the toxic masculinity we see everywhere, and that's a piece of it. And so it's very hard for men to be raised that way or socialized that way, and then they're supposed to be really emotionally engaged in their relationship. So it can be trickier. And so I think women should definitely allow room for that, because women are much more relational. We have better what's called emotional fluency. We can articulate our emotions much better, much more clearly, and we do it more readily. So I think men can learn, definitely learn from women in that way. But what your question was about what to do about it, like if you're in this situation, I think to bring up the problem in a compassionate and a very straightforward way. I'm one for direct communication. I kind of find it funny that people sometimes really struggle with, well, how do I say this? How do I say that? It's like, well, say it. Just say it. Say, be kind when you say it, but you can't not say it just because you're afraid that it might hurt a little bit. It might be something hard to deal with. I would say you have to put it out there, and you have to just, share it and say, I feel like we're disconnected, we're off base, we're not seeing eye to eye on things, or, something's going on with us, but I'm not sure what it is. It may be, we fight a lot, we fight too much, we fight over stupid things, I'm worried about that. So maybe expressing your concern and then saying, maybe we can figure this out, maybe we can do something on our own. And if we can't, maybe we need to get some help, or maybe we need to go to a workshop or read a few books, or, just start doing the groundwork to see if you can get out of it. And the sooner we get out of the problem, and the sooner the better. Don't wait and wait and wait. And then the problem it snowballs. So
I love that. You also give a lot of tutelage on the flow of emotions, from situation that triggers you to the quick assessment to how your body reacts with body arousal,
and then perceptions and thoughts start flowing in, and then the feelings start flowing in, and then of course behavior and reaction to that. So and it's all happening obviously in a nanosecond. You're not even conscious of what's happening. What's a thought? What's a feeling?
Yeah.
What's real? What's not real?
It's rapid, and our brains do this super, super rapidly because this is how we survived as a species. So we're really always scanning for danger, and I don't mean danger. I mean, back in a million years ago, it might have been like a saber-toothed tiger coming after us. But today it could be, say, our partners shutting us out, or feeling disconnected from a partner, or feeling like you got a certain response from your partner that, that kind of went into that place of your attachment related stuff, and that implicit memory kind of gets jarred. And so that does happen very rapidly. And the emotional reaction it's not just the feeling, but it's the physiological response as well as the feeling. So it always involves the mind and the body. And so we do this very rapid appraisal of like, oh, what just happened there? And is it dangerous? Is it not dangerous? And if it feels dangerous, sometimes our emotion kicks way ahead and our partners just see that. And so that's when maybe the person we're with says something like, God, your reaction was so out of proportion to what I did. You're making a mountain out of a molehill, or something like that. And you may not even know why. You might say, oh my gosh, why is this upsetting me so much? And so I like people to slow it down and, inwardly attend more and ask themselves, what was my strong reaction about? What's happening? Is this reminding me of the time I was left alone, in a bathroom or wherever it is, or maybe it's just the same feeling. Like, that feeling of when you're not seen, or you don't feel important, or you wonder if you're worthy, or, it goes deep, deep in there. And so that's not always on the very forefront of our mind, but it's back there in the brain, and it gets really set off. And so I think it helps to have better regulation, right? Better to know what we're thinking, what happened, what triggered us, so that we can respond more thoughtfully. Okay, that's super, super important to do, and that's good for you. Certainly in a healthy relationship, it's great if you're with somebody who can do that too, or at least is open to it. But it could be really helpful because you want to know what is setting me off, what is triggering me. And you're also going to want to hopefully be able to communicate that if you need to. You could say, oh, you know what? It's just me. It's my own stuff here. Or you can say, it is my own stuff, but when you did this, it just feels so awful to me, or whatever it is.
I just had this image of jumping into a vat of molasses at that moment. It's like, because that's what I need at that moment, is jumping into a vat of molasses, because I need to slow way down in those moments, because
Yes.
It's all rapid fire. And then it's like a pinball machine inside your heart, because it feels like it's not like one pain point, there's one little sword goes in one little pain point of your heart, and then it bounces over to another little pain point in your heart, and it's just bouncing all it feels like is
ping pong, yes.
Pain and terror.
And it can happen. You can get into that so rapidly. Yes. And then before long you're going, how did this happen?
How did we get here? Yeah, how did we get here? We were just having a lovely dinner. How did it end up here?
Yes, exactly.
Every time I see FOO, I think Foo Fighters. So can we?
Oh, very funny. Yeah.
So let's talk about Foo Fighters.
It was a little easier than writing family of origin like 50 times in the book. So I just shortened it to Foo, FOO.
Right. And the bottom line is that you're always directing us back to family of origin, to where we set up those patterns and where we learned how to communicate with each other and learned how to react to pain and suffering and everything, right?
Exactly. So you're going to want to think about different things within your family of origin, which is the family that you were born into. There's different ways that we learned rules for communicating and for expressing our emotion and for also processing emotion. For instance, if, I hear stories, things like that, if I'm trying to think just off the top of my head, something recent where, all of a sudden, parents come home and they're like, we're getting divorced and dad's going to live here, mom's going to live here. And are you okay with that? Are you okay? How do you feel? And the kids just sits there nodding, okay. And then the parents go away thinking, oh gosh, he handled that so well. But then nobody ever goes to the kid again to ask,
Right.
are you okay? Let me check in with you. Yeah. What's it like to be now at dad's house one week and mom's house at the next? So nobody ever then revisits that with the child or asks how they're doing or checks in with them or goes any deeper. And or the kid is suddenly, oh, you're not going to go to that school that you were at the last 8 years of your life. We have to yank you out and we have to move and we're sending you to another school. Okay? And that's it. And they don't process that with the child. They don't say.
And also around divorce, because I'm a child of divorce too, you don't want to ruffle feathers. Like you don't want to make it any more comfortable for everybody. It's like, okay, everybody's uncomfortable here and I don't want to be part of the problem. And also, was I even the cause of the problem? A lot of times.
Yeah. So we figure out and learn how to do that because we have somebody else holding us in that and helping us through and helping us make sense of it. Because there's no magic answer. There's no, you're just going to be fine with it and that's that. But you could say, of course you're sad. That makes sense that you're sad. What are you most concerned about? Or, just taking that time to process, make sense and understand it and allow and make room for it and say, yeah, it's okay. And guess what? We're moving. It stinks. You being sad is a natural reaction, validating it and all that. And so, how that happened, did that go on in your family? Did it not go on? Was someone doing that for you? Was nobody doing that for you? Was someone shaming you for feeling sad about something or crying? Were you only allowed to express? Well, you could cry, but if you got angry, forget it. Forget about it. Right. I'll give you something to cry about, or like what were the messages that you got, and do you want to accept it or not accept it anymore? Like now that you're an adult, I mean, you can do what you want. You can say, no, you know what, that was wrong, that wasn't right. I don't want to accept that. If I'm sad, it's okay to cry, and you know what, it's also okay if I get angry or however you want to do it. And it's not. This isn't necessarily to blame parents. They did the best they could, as often as well. To me, it's more about connecting dots, making sense of things, understanding what happened, and understanding what might be that, these running themes, these belief systems, these things that we carry on that maybe we want to get rid of. Maybe we want to say, no more. I'm not living my life like this anymore, and I'm not thinking this anymore. I just don't want to do it. It's destructive, and I'm now putting out this energy with it as well, and I'm attracting it now too. So if I just because my parents maybe didn't see my worth, do I want to go around and continue to think that I'm unworthy? Or do I want to change that? Do I want to do something about that?
So do you lead people down, like in my book, I do, there's a lot of shadow work in my book. So going back and nurturing those little kids inside of us that didn't get nurtured, like nobody was helping them navigate those emotions like you just described. And so I suggest talking to that little kid. So do you suggest that as well? The going back in and reparenting in a way your own little child that didn't get what they needed at that moment?
That's a fantastic idea. Yes, I would absolutely recommend it. It's great also to do with, like, if you can do it with another person, if there's someone there that you do trust that you can do this work, some of this work with too, that's okay. But not everyone has somebody. Something I heard recently that struck me is that for some people, if it's been like very severe family situation, or it's been very unsafe for them, maybe there was sexual abuse or something really horrible along those lines. Sometimes they've only attached to animals. They've only attached to a pet.
Oh, wow.
And the pet can even be used as like a safe attachment figure, so to speak. So yes, inner child, you turning inward to nurture that child that's in you and and reparent, like you said, is excellent. So all of those things are, are helpful ideas. Absolutely.
One of the superpowers, one of the 5 superpowers in my book is super self-love. And so self-love is obviously interwoven throughout your book as well. And I'm going to read this little piece on self-love. Loving yourself is a good idea. I love that sentence. Talking not about the narcissistic version of self-love, but about the version where you have positive regard for your own well-being and happiness. I just love how simply that is put. Positive regard for your own well-being and happiness. You absolutely should love yourself. I don't believe you have to love yourself, though, before you can love someone else, as it is popular to say, which it is. So I want you to speak to that because, and you also speak to those women who think, oh my God, do I have to? I mean, I remember thinking that before my last relationship, like, how together do I have to freaking be?
Yes, I think that's a confusing myth. Maybe the best way to say it is you are not born, knowing how to love yourself, right? You were taught that or not taught that, depending on what happened in the foo again, in the family of origin. So I think there's a lot of things that you can do to make yourself, to find a sense of purpose and find, happiness and find balance and do things that do bring you joy and happiness and make you feel productive and all of that. But I think we can develop that, that self-love sort of as we, as we go along. And I think it's okay. I think there's an element of it that sometimes when we're with the right person and they bring out the best in us and we bring out the best in them, not that it's about completing each other. It's not like that. But I think you really have a strong sense of like what love really is, from that. And I don't have to wait and wait and wait. Well, I don't love myself yet. I shouldn't be trying to pair up with anybody,
Yeah, you just said something that made me think that a solid relationship can spark your own self-love in you. It's not about the other person loving you, but you can spark your own self-love that has actually nothing to do with that other person, but can be sparked by that other person. Something else that it just made me think of also is that, this has not been one of my issues. I think probably because I'm an only child and I feel like there might be another, I'm an Aries, which is just, I don't know, I just feel like we're just like such, leaders and independent. And I don't know about the Aries, but I know a lot of Aries that are like me where we don't tend to get, and I'm not an astrology expert. I don't even know that I've ever mentioned astrology on this other than having my amazing Vedic astrology expert, Carol Allen on, but it's not really about astrology, but it's just about what I'm saying is like my personality type is not one I think that tends toward loneliness. Like I don't get lonely and I don't get like bored on my own and yada, yada. So I have never stayed in a relationship for fear of being alone, but I do know many women who have, and you have a section of your book called You Have Trouble Being Alone. And I'm going to read another section of it. This fear of loneliness is a surefire way to tolerate bad behavior in romantic partners. As long as you have a warm body, you're okay. However, it is another way for you to keep yourself from having the love in your life that you deserve. This is probably one of the most common reasons that people stay in a relationship with someone who mistreats them. Then you give the signs that you are having trouble being alone. But let's talk to that because it does seem like there's the fear of loneliness and then that desperate, especially when you get to the age of if women, I never wanted to have kids, so I would never hit that mark where I was like, had anxiety about not finding someone at that moment in my life. But for women that also feel like they want to have kids, so that it's like they're both fear-based, right? So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's something that I would hear a lot, that the feeling of loneliness would be so intolerable that they wanted someone. Yet, when I think about it, to me, it's like a worse loneliness when you're in a disconnected relationship. So when you have that person there and you're disconnected, that sounds much worse to me, but I definitely
Let me interrupt
hear
to just say, I want to give a shout out to my first book is called The Lazy Woman's Guide to Just About Everything. I wrote it with Judy O'Neill, who's almost 20 years older than me. And she said, I had just broken up with somebody, and I was saying, it wasn't that I was lonely, but it was just, I think the holidays were coming up, and I was just like, and I don't have trouble with the holidays anymore, but at that, right after a breakup, sometimes if the holidays are coming up. Yeah. And so she was saying, Bridget, believe me, there is nothing lonelier than being in bed with your husband of 25 years or whatever, and feeling so disconnected and so lonely. And it was like, and what that did for me, I mean, that was just she was just recalling back to a moment years before that she had felt lonely in a relationship. But I mean, what it made me realize is that we all have those moments where we feel disconnected from love in whatever form it is. So it makes it more human, right? But let me bring it back to you, and I'm sorry that I interrupted.
No, that's right. Absolutely. I spend a lot of time in the book talking about tolerating distressing emotions and doing that if you are in between people or you're not in a relationship, because loneliness is one, but sometimes you're also you're just in a lot of pain. You might actually feel heartbreak. It makes it very like a slippery slope for some women to easily get back into that. And also, again, it just could be a comfort. Like, well, I've been with this person 6 months, 8 months, it's just trying something new or different, or going back out there just feels so dreadful. And so I really try to give a lot of strategies to help women, tolerate those negative feelings so that they can get through that time and hopefully start making their lives maybe more fulfilling, or thinking about things that they maybe want to do that they haven't done. Maybe there's something else in their life that they have to change too. It's not just about, the guy, maybe there's other areas that they need to work on, because I want them to really, if they're going to be in a relationship with someone, that it feels really good. They feel like they have an equal partner, and that they're thriving, and this person brings out the best in them, and they bring out the best in that partner. And to just tolerate, let's say, a so-so or a relationship that's bad, which to me is even worse than that. I just think is, you're really selling yourself short. And then the other piece of it, like you said, about women who are wanting to have children, and the biological clock it's a harsh reality. And you don't want to spend these, prime years, like in your 20s, and you're wasting time year after year with somebody if you're not sure that they're the right one, or you're already seeing that they're unhealthy and there's things that are wrong with them. You don't want to waste that time. And the dating pool also, like as time goes on, the ones that are really, that have that secure attachment, they're committing earlier. So they're finding their partners and they're committed. And so who's left in the dating pool?
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's a horrible thought.
I hate to say that, but it's true. It's true. So, and again, not that it's impossible, but I would say take it seriously. Like if you think you want to settle down with somebody, take it more seriously, the process of dating, and be more discerning about who you're choosing to spend time with and how long you're wanting to spend time with them.
That's a good one. I was just going to say, is there one tip that you would say, and it sounds like you gave a tip just then, which is if you're in a relationship that isn't feeling right, focus on what you love, focus on things that you want to create in your life.
Yes, absolutely. And that everybody, I think, really deserves like a wonderful person to spend their life with, someone who really loves and values them and shows them the care that they deserve and shows up for them and can be really emotionally present and engaged. And so, I would say don't ever think that you don't deserve that, or that you can't have that, or that's beyond your reach. So that's, like, I would say, the takeaway message I really want women to have.
That's beautiful.
That's a beautiful
note to end on. Thank you for that. That is gorgeous. So again, everybody, the name of her book is called Ghosted and Breadcrumbs: stop falling for unavailable men and get smart about healthy relationships. And it's Dr. Marni Feuerman, and you can find her at drmarnionline.com, and I'll put that link in the podcast notes as well. Dr. Marni Feuerman, thank you so much for joining me today. You are definitely a superhero of love. You're out there helping heal hearts.
I love that title. I'll take it. Superhero of love. Thank you, Bridget. I really appreciate it.
That was Dr. Marni Feuerman. Thank you for joining us today, Superhero of Love. Please, if you have a chance, go over to iTunes and rate and review us, and sign up for the podcast and tell your friends about it so we can have more superheroes of love in the fold.